Good morning. The word for you today. Today is Thursday, November 30th. It's the last one of our daily devotional series, so I hope you got your new book. If not, please come up to the church office. We've got more than enough for you. Our devotion today is titled, Give Your Worries to God. It comes to us from the book of Philippians, chapter 4. Our verse is in verse 7. I'm going to read that entire paragraph, so starting in verse 4, but I promise you'll be able to follow along. So it says, Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your request be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and in your minds in Christ Jesus. So, what does this passage mean? Well, first things first, this is a letter written to the church at Philippi. Okay? We all know that a letter wasn't written to a church unless something really good or really bad was happening. So if Paul felt the need to write this message, obviously this was a problem that was going on. The problem of worry, the problem of fear, the problem of anxiety. This is a universal human condition. And so I think the best way to look at it is to look at historical examples of this. Because I'll be honest here, reading this alone doesn't help me give my worries over to God, because it doesn't really seem to give me the way to do that. But when we look at this in context with other stories from the Bible, other histories of these people, we get to see a new and rich way to engage with this text. One of the earliest ways, I think, is what I imagine Adam and Eve had to go through whenever they found out that Cain had killed Seth, or Abel. Cain had killed Abel and had Seth. Sorry about that. So Cain kills Abel, and a parent loses a child. And I can only imagine the heartbreak that happens. I hope I never have to go through that. But what I can imagine is that there is fear, there is worry, there's anger, there's depression. There are all these emotions that I can't begin to understand. And through that, Adam and Eve still know that there's a God. And so the question is, why would God allow that to happen? And then the worry is, will this happen again when we have Seth? Will Seth do something like this? Will Cain come back? We go forward to Noah. And when Noah survives the flood, he builds the boat. I'm sure the worry for Noah and his children, even though they heard God promise, I will not flood the earth again, I'm sure there was a worry in the back of their mind that said, what if he does? We go to Abraham, who was told to go up to the mountain and sacrifice his son. And God said, don't do it, this was a test. But what if that seed of worry came back in and Abraham had to ask, what if he tells me to do this again, and what if he doesn't stop it? All throughout, we see these amazing shows of grace, these amazing shows of God's sovereignty over the world. But they're always contrasted with these really awful possibilities. And so when we deal with God, we're always dealing with the possibility of intense pain, intense suffering, not because of who God is, but because the cost to follow God is so great that the way that our lives seem right now can be completely upended for his glory. So, what do we do with that? I like to look at the psalmist for this. The psalmists continually talk about their transgressions and their sins. They continually talk about the pain that they have and the sorrows that they have in this world. And throughout all of it, they stop and they say, I give praise to God. Throughout all of it, they stop, and even when they feel awful, even when they feel terrible and mistreated and abandoned by God, they still say, I'm not, and even though I feel this way, I know the truth is deeper than that. And they stop and they say, despite this inconvenience, despite this pain, and despite this suffering, I am going to choose to continue to worship the God of my fathers so that I can be given peace and understanding that only he can give. So, what does it mean to give your worries to God? It doesn't mean to not worry. It means that even when we worry, even when we fear, even when we dread, we stop and we say that God knows what he's doing, and we profess that we trust him, even if we really don't at the time. And eventually, that understanding will come. Have a nice day.